Hey guys, welcome back to the Dargon Gaming Squad. Today I have a special guest, Sam, from the channel Chalice and Chains. So why not grab a drink and a snack and join us in a minute. Okay, so today we're going to introduce a new series. It's systems exploration. I don't think I've made any secret of the fact that I'm really interested in learning about new systems. So Sam was nice enough to join me today to talk about Edge of the Empire. Sam, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, my name is Sam. My YouTube channel is Chalice and Chains. You can see the URL, hopefully you can see the URL on the lower third that I have set up. Yeah, and today, I guess, as Chris said, we will be introducing Edge of the Empire.
So last Friday night, Sam had a character creation session for a group of us that he's going to run a one-shot for, which is happening this week on Friday night. And so if you want to check that out, I'll be sure to have the link in the description box below so you can check it out and see how that goes. I think it's really helpful, and I would suggest maybe grabbing a character sheet from the Fantasy Flight website so that you can kind of follow along. I thought that was super helpful. So Sam, before we get into Edge itself, I'm kind of curious. We've not got to visit much on the Facebook groups, so I'm curious about your background. What is your gaming background?
Oh yeah, so my background, I started, gosh, I think it was in middle school with Old World of Darkness, primarily Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse. And I'm really glad I started with those because if anybody has taken a look at those, it's called the Storyteller system. And it trains you to think in a different way than certain other RPGs do. But as everybody does almost, I then quickly got into D&D 3rd edition because that was the newest edition at the time. I didn't have anybody playing 2nd edition. We did that. We did 3.5. And then largely, I kind of dabbled in some other stuff here and there, some of the D20-based Star Wars systems, but up through college, it was really D&D 3.5. And then I moved away and took about a 7 or 8 year hiatus and didn't really get back into gaming until about 2015 when I discovered, a little game on YouTube called The Provokers and realized that you could play D&D online over Hangouts. And since then, I've spent a lot of time and a lot of money that I probably shouldn't have getting into all kinds of different systems and enjoying myself thoroughly.
Cool. So what got you into Edge specifically?
Yeah, so I've always loved Star Wars, and I've never loved the Star Wars role-playing games. I had started with the revised core rulebook that was made by Fantasy Flight Games, by Wizards of the Coast, actually. It was basically D&D 3.5 version, and it was terrible, right? I mean, it was D&D in space, which is okay. Clearly, Pathfinder's doing their Starfinder, which is D&D in space, so that's going to be fun. But I just didn't dig it. And then they came out with Saga Edition, and again, they tried to improve it, and it was okay, but I wasn't feeling it. And so probably last year, people started just raving about this system, and I started seeing it online. And a couple of my friends in some of the various Facebook groups were playing it, and so I started checking it out. And when I first checked it out, I was like, no way, this game is crazy. This is way too complicated. I'm not going to play this. But several of my friends were playing it, and they were like, no, this game is great. You have to check it out. And so I got into a game, and then I loved it, and then I started running games, and then now it's one of my favorite systems. So what sets it apart for you from other games that you've played? What makes it so great? Yeah, so it's interesting because I'm not normally a fan of what I call crunchy games. And Edge of the Empire is definitely crunchy. It's got a lot of subsystems, but what really sort of sold the system to me is the narrative dice mechanic that it has. So it does have proprietary dice. So these funny looking polyhedrals with, silly symbols on them. But what's really cool about it is that the dice themselves help to tell a story. And my style of gaming is much more narrative than it is tactical or gamey or whatever. I'm the kind of person who would enjoy sitting around a campfire with a bunch of people just telling a story. And occasionally if you have some dice and some rules to kind of help structure that storytelling, that's great. And Edge of the Empire does that.
Cool. I'm finding in kind of following along this game, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the channel yet, but I've been listening to the campaign podcast, which they're playing Edge of the Empire, and it is really interesting the way the dice cancel each other out and lends itself to the story through advantages and disadvantages and all kinds of or setbacks. It is pretty cool. I've been really enjoying listening to it, and I'm really, really excited to jump in and give it a go. So if somebody's not a huge Star Wars enthusiast, so we've talked about this a little bit. I've seen some of the movies. I've never read any of the books. I haven't even seen the most recent movie that comes out. There's probably other people like me, or I should say that came out. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's other people like me that aren't huge Star Wars fans, but maybe enjoy the movies. Mm-hmm. How does that work for somebody who maybe doesn't know all the lore of Star Wars?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, a lot of that is up to the GM and the group that you're playing with, because there are some people out there who are very strict. Like, we're going to play canon. We expect you to know a lot about the Star Wars universe. I'm not one of those people. I generally know the lore from the movies. I haven't read a lot of the novels or played a lot of the video games or whatever. So most of my knowledge is based on the movies. And what's cool about Edge of the Empire and the other two lines, Age of Rebellion and Force and Destiny, is that they're based in the same era of the first Star Wars movie, of A New Hope. Actually, it's between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. So within that period of time before the second movie. And so in terms of the system itself, what Star Wars in and of itself does, it's an adventure story. It's a hero story, right? It basically blends the elements of classic mythology and kind of puts them into space, and you have this this group of people, or this sort of everyman hero who becomes larger than life and ends up saving the galaxy, right? And so essentially you're just telling adventure stories. And what Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars system allows you to do is tell a specific type of adventure story depending on which line you're running. So really, you don't need to know a lot about Star Wars, because if you've ever read any fantasy fiction before, if you've ever read any sort of pulp adventure, even if you like sort of action movies and stuff like that, you can kind of get into the idea of Star Wars and the feel of Star Wars, because Star Wars is much more of a PG-13 high adventure, high drama kind of genre, so to speak.
Yeah. That's true, isn't it? So the other thing I was going to ask you is people who want to get started, whether they're a player, whether they're a GM, maybe the advice is a little different for each. What would be your advice? People want to play this game.
Absolutely. So it depends on your preference, but I know for me, I had to watch a bunch of actual plays. And I had to play in a game or two before I understood the system. just reading the book, I knew I was going to like the system because a bunch of my friends were saying that it was awesome, people that I really trusted, and I had seen people playing it on YouTube. So conceptually, I knew that I was going to like the system, but I had to figure out how to run it. Because for me, I always think first, can I run this game? So if you want to join in and you really primarily want to be a player in the game, there's a couple of things that you can do. The first thing I would do is maybe if you want to kind of invest in it, but you're not quite sure if you want to go full bore into this game, check out one of the beginner games for the system. But decide before you do that, when you think of Star Wars, what do you like about Star Wars? Do you like Luke Skywalker as the X-Wing pilot, fighting, doing the trench run on the Death Star and shooting stormtroopers and invading the and all that? Or do you really like the Han Solo and the Lando Calrissian, and the sort of scoundrel type characters? And is that maybe the type of story that you'd want to tell? Or do you dig the Jedi, right? You're all about the Jedi and the Force, because that will kind of determine which of the three lines you want to start with. And then, like I said, maybe pick up the beginner adventure, because what it does, you can probably get it on Amazon for about $20, $25. And it's well worth it at that price, because you're getting a pack of dice, first of all, which will run you anywhere from $12 to $15 American normally. And you're getting really good production value in an adventure that walks you through, both the GM and the player, step by step, assuming you've never played it before, how to do it. It's a simplified version, and it has a simplified rule set as well. So it's got a small rule book, which can be helpful because it has the basics. And it's also got like maps and tokens and stuff. So you get everything that you need to play, including some of the pre-generated characters, like the example that I sent you for the character creation that we did. And they're really amazing. And when you get one of those beginner games, they've laid it out specifically for those that either are brand new to role playing or specifically brand new to this system. So it's a lot easier to kind of wrap your head around the system when you do that. That being said, if you've like I've done, maybe you've listened to some podcasts, you've watched, some actual plays, you've talked to some people who play it and they really like it, you can't go wrong by getting the core book. Now, the core book will run you, full retail is about $60. You can usually find it a lot less than that, but you can play everything you want to play within the sort of the setting, right? With the one core rule book, because it's got all the rules to play as well as how to GM it and an adventure in the back.
That's really great. So many systems. It's nice to see that happening with so many systems, but we all know systems that you need a few other things too. You think you have everything, and then you find out, oh, I need this other piece or that other piece. So that's really cool. So anything else you want to share or add about Edge of the Empire, Sam?
Yeah, definitely. I kind of alluded to it before, but the biggest hurdle that I see with getting into Edge of the Empire for a lot of people is the dice. They don't get the mechanic, or they look at the system and they're like, well, gosh, they broke it up into 3 different lines, and each line has a bunch of books, and I got to buy these funny dice, and I don't understand the system and all that. And those are legitimate concerns, but this is a system that a guy like me who hates crunchy systems adores. It is a system that is much easier to play than it is to read, because at the end of the day, Edge of the Empire, like almost every other role-playing game out there, is a skill resolution system. You roll skills, you roll your dice, and the dice help you determine whether you succeed or fail. But what's brilliant about the system is that the dice are narrative dice. So there is a success and failure mechanic, but there are also things like advantage or threat. right? And so let's say, for example, that you're in a scene where you are fighting some stormtroopers, and you set up your dice pool with your positive and your negative dice. You roll them, and maybe you end up with a success, but 3 threat, okay? Well, in a system like, the D20 version of Star Wars, you just have pass fail. That's it, right? But in this system, well, you've succeeded. So let's say you were shooting at the stormtroopers. You successfully hit one of the stormtroopers. But because your dice came up with 3 threats, that means that there's a complication, right? Something in the scene goes wrong. And so what that does is that adds drama to the narrative, because now the GM can then say, okay, yeah, absolutely. You fire at the stormtroopers, but to do that, you have to come out from behind your cover to get a good shot at them. And you take one down, but now you're exposed to, their fire with no obstructions, right? Or something along those lines. There are mechanical elements that you can use that threat for, that it can do things within the rules of the system, but at the end of the day, it puts the narrative first. And if you like narrative gaming, this system is awesome. If you like narrative gaming and you like Star Wars, you have to get this system.
Cool.
Yeah, so, and I'm going to, make the video of the game that we are going to play on Friday available. We probably won't have video because we're going to be doing it through Discord, but you don't really need video. And I'm the type of GM that tends to kind of talk about the dice rolls and everything. So if it's your first time encountering this system, certainly take a look at that video if you have the chance. And I hope that it'll help kind of illuminate how the system works.
Yeah, guys, I really recommend, if you have the opportunity to get in a game with Sam, the character creation session was so helpful the other night, and his approach to teaching this game has been really helpful, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. So I recommend checking out Sam's games. You can find him on the various Facebook groups. I know he's on the Absolute Tabletop group for sure. And so, keep an eye out for his games. And the other thing I was going to say is, so you also suggested the Order 66 podcast, and I've started listening to that, and just actually on the way home tonight, I was listening, and they are newer players, and they were really struggling with the dice. And it made me so thankful that you sent me that dice roller, that free dice roller app. And I gotta say, I think that might be another good tip for beginners, because that particular app, and I'll be sure to link it below, that particular app actually does all your cancellations and stuff for you. So you can see what you rolled, but it also tells you what the results are, and you're not struggling to figure out what the results mean. So that might be really helpful as well in kind of getting started. And I'm a really tactile person. I love to have those dice and just roll them, but I'm kind of relieved now after listening to these guys kind of feel like they're struggling a little bit trying to sort it out, that I'm not going to need to worry about that this time around.
Yeah, and I honestly would recommend anybody get the digital dice roller. You can actually get one right from the Android or the iTunes App Store for Apple or Android, right on your phone or your tablet. I think it's like $6. It's really cheap. It's great, and it also gives you just a regular set of polyhedral dice. There's like a whole bunch of different dice for the various Star Wars games in there. But honestly, don't even bother unless you really want physical dice. I wouldn't even bother, because to be honest, I've never played this game in person at a live table, because all of my gaming is online. So I've exclusively used online dice rollers. It started with Hangouts when they still had that functionality, but lately I've used it in Roll20, which you have to pay for to have the full kind of functionality there. And Discord has a bot that you can sort of type in, and it's got the little images. It's really neat. So various dice rollers. But yes, those will help, because you're creating a dice pool, and then things will cancel out. So you'll instantly get your results. And for people like me who hate things like saying, okay, setting up a combat scene and then say roll for initiative, and then everybody waits while you roll. No, so I want things to be fast, especially in combat, and so that helps a lot. And it's, you know, and the one I mentioned, I mean, it was the one on the app or whatever, costs money, but yeah, there's free ones that you can find. So if you have access to a computer or a tablet, you know, I can't recommend it highly enough.
Yeah, especially if you're playing online. I'm hoping that at some point I'll get to play this in person with somebody, assuming I enjoy it Friday night, which I think I'm going to. Yep. So I'm always hoping for those personal opportunities too.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. I think we covered everything. So thanks everybody for tuning in. And as promised, again, I will be sure to have all the links below for you. And I'm going to try to find that. I'll put that dice roller in there too. And check us out and go check out Sam's channel too, Chalice and Chains. Make sure you tune in and watch those Edge of the Empire games. They should be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for joining me, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
And until next time, you guys, get out and get gaming. Bye.